Everyone. I'm going to be going over the prompts for this week on conflict. So, the first prompt asks, how might these attachment styles that were discussed in this article be observed in conflict communication? So, this article talked about mainly anxious and avoidant attachment styles, and I think that they would show up a little bit differently during communication when there is a conflict. So, first, the article found that spouses that are higher in both attachment and anxious styles usually experience a lot of relational turbulence, and I think that transitions within the relationship can definitely increase uncertainty, which I feel like this just like kind of the worse the situation is, then spouses who may have these attributes, I feel like that can heighten those attributes as well. So I think an anxious attachment could look like that you're communicating more during the conflict, but that might not be healthy because it may come across as you're wanting immediate reassurance. You're asking the same questions all the time. You might be over analyzing and overthinking what your partner's doing, or you might be trying to resolve the conflict as quickly as possible rather than taking time to actually dissect the problem. And I feel like anxious attachment could also be a little more emotional, or you could sound worried or urgent. So some phrases I kind of thought of, one the big ones like, "Oh, are you mad at me? Like, why are you being this way?" or stuff like that. And on the other side, avoidant attachment, which I would consider myself to lean more this way, and this could be kind of on the other side of, instead of being a little more clingy, you're probably closing yourself off, so you're communicating less during the conflict. You might be withdrawing, shutting down, or not responding, and avoiding emotional conversations in general. And avoiding attachment could also be more focused on logic or independence instead of the feelings. And I think I would consider myself to be an avoidant attachment. And I find that, at least for me, whenever there's discomfort or conflict, I think I definitely want distance sometimes. And the tone of avoidant attachment could also come across as kind of detached or like defensive, or it might seem like you don't care, which in some cases maybe you don't care, but I feel like people just have different ways of expressing their emotions. So, kind of a phrase I could think of is like, "I need space," or "I don't want to talk about this right now." So, I feel like the anxious and avoidant attachment are kind of on opposite sides. So, for the second prompt, I took that little quiz and I got, where is it? I pasted it in the thing. Yeah, I got disorganized slash fearful avoidant. And this one says that it combines both anxious and avoidant tendencies. And it kind of means that, oh, I may want closeness and reassurance, but I also feel like overwhelmed when I'm vulnerable with my emotions, which I agree with. So this could affect my perception of conflict, is that I may overthink delayed responses or changes in someone's tone when there is a conflict, or I may assume that someone is upset with me before I have enough context. And I feel like that's something that happens to me a lot. I feel like I overthink and I kind of assume the other person is upset when a lot of the times it was probably just a miscommunication. And I also can sometimes feel torn between wanting to try to fix the conflict, just because I feel like whenever there is a problem, I want to solve it as soon as possible, because I don't like to have something lingering in the back of my mind, because then it kind of takes over my thoughts. So that's for the first article. So for the second article, that I like how this question was phrased, that it examines the dark side but ends up highlighting the positive. So this one was interesting because I like forget that COVID. I mean, that felt like so long ago, but it was an interesting article. I thought that was kind of something interesting to study because that was a big transition for people, especially spouses. Like, you might have not seen each other that much during the day because of work or whatever was going on, but then all of a sudden you're stuck in your house together for basically together all the time. So the question is, if you were a couples counselor or therapist, what type of practices might you recommend to refocus your partner's attention on the shared highs? So I think like the article said, having writing down your weekly positives, I think that is a good idea. But I also feel like writing down what you're thankful for, which kind of goes along with that. But I think thinking through your situations, if you are going through a hard time, thinking about the positives, or if there is something negative going on, maybe thinking of it in a different light, such as, okay, this bad thing might be happening to me, but also this could be an opportunity for something better. Which I know it's kind of cliche to say, and sometimes there are really bad situations that it seems like there is no good coming out of this, like this bad situation is just bad. But in terms of a couples counselor, honestly, I've never been in relationships, so I don't even know like what I would say, but so I feel like I can't really give advice on that. But if I were gonna try to help a couple, I definitely would say communicate. 'Cause I feel like um, just communicating with each other is important. And then I know some that seems like it'd be a big issue, at least from what I've heard my friends have what I've heard from them, also have observed. It seems like not communicating kind of starts issues. So I would say definitely communicating with each other and kind of writing down what you're thankful for and sharing those same positives. I thought that was interesting because the article found that um, it was better for the relationship to have the shared positive, your shared highs for the week, and then whenever you thought your shared when the lows were converging, that it didn't have make much of a difference. So I thought that was interesting. And for the last prompt, one of the major findings from this reading is that male victims of intimate partner violence receive less sympathy than female victims. Do you believe that this is a product of cultural norms, or does it reflect a real difference in risk and harm? So that's actually interesting because I feel like that's something that's been researched a lot in cases of intimate partner violence or sexual assault like that. I think it is a part of cultural norms because I think on one hand, back in the day, I feel like men were just socialized to be like tough, like you're not supposed to cry. Like, I know like a lot of men have said that that's how they were raised, and I do think that is changing. I think at least parenting now, I feel like we're taking a different direction, but I think back then it kind of was a stark difference between like how like as a woman it's like, oh, you're okay, it's okay if you cry, it's okay, it's like fine whatever because you're a woman. But I do think that men were kind of expected not to kind of be emotional like that. And in regards to, does it reflect a real difference in risk, I think with intimate partner violence, like the study found that they weren't as empathetic, I guess, to the male victims. I think when looking at intimate partner violence, on average, just in general, the average guy is going to be stronger than the average woman. So I think when cases come out, I thought the male was the one who was being victimized. I think sometimes the audience may seem like, oh, well, the guy's stronger, so like he could have stopped it from happening or whatever. So I do think that I think it's a combination of both. I would say it's more of cultural norms. I just think it's because of the way have we've been like gender has been socialized and how what the expectations are. But it is interesting because it does seem like from what I've seen that male victims are not taken as seriously. And one example I thought of doesn't have to do with intimate partner violence. Well, it kind of does, but I always think about how when people talk about age gap, like relationships, like people talk about, oh, like when I was a teenager, um, like you'll see it basically when a woman shares like, oh, she'll be like, oh, I was in high school talking to a guy who's like in their 20s, so like a minor and adult. And people say like, oh, online will be like, oh, you were a victim or whatever. But then I've seen where if it's a guy who says it, then the audience and which will usually be mostly men saying this, they'll be like, oh, you were lucky or like whatever stuff like that. So I do think it's interesting how it is how we are socialized differently. So I think it is a little bit cultural norms, more, but it also is kind of. I wouldn't say it's there isn't a real difference in risk and harm, even though there are more. It said the article said that more women are victims. I think that like men are more like they're less likely to be victimized, but I still think just because it's less likely doesn't mean that it's any less important. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts for this. Sorry that was so long, but those are my thoughts over the articles on conflict this week. Thank you.